Hello, it's We've Been Watching with Claire Woodward and David Stevenson. We're back for another week, Claire, and the sun is sort of cascading through the window here. I hope
It's
that doesn't
gorgeous,
mean
isn't it?
I hope that doesn't mean the TV watching season is over, because when the sun arrives, the programs become absolutely rubbish, normally.
Yeah, and could they be any more rubbish than many of them are at the moment? I mean,
Possibly not. I
you
mean,
possibly not.
some of them are getting worse and worse. We'll talk about that um, at some length because it's becoming a bit of a pain. But here's our list of reviews for this week. Call the Midwife, BBC One new series, the 10th anniversary series. The Syndicate, BBC One continuing. That's run off the rails in glamorous Monaco. We'll look at that. ITV repeats, Gino, Gordon and Fred. Oh my Lord. We'll get onto that. And the little known show, Location, 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 which has become a staple in our family. And This Is My House is another staple in my family. So also BBC One, and we'll take a look at that. But let's start with Call the Midwife, which has made it for 10 years. It's now reached 1966. I mean, is this show going to go forever, do you think, and come up to, I don't know, 1999 to the millennium? And
Well, why not? Because I was born in 1965, and I have to say, in the new series, the sight of all that NHS orange juice in the mother and baby clinic brought it right back to me. So I think this is the great thing about Call the Midwife. You know, you've got older viewers remembering original series. It's just taking people along with it, with their memories. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And this week's episode where they're sort of bringing in, there was a storyline about a child who was born disabled, and it turned out his serviceman father had been involved in a sort of nuclear experiment in the Pacific, and then they're sort of talking about private medicine as well. I mean, it's period, it's contemporary, and it's still got a big warm heart, and it's not wet and soppy. And I think that's the reason it's so successful.
no, it's not. I mean, it did have its sentimental moments along the way, Call the Midwife, but I
Yeah.
think it's sort of hardened, darkened up as much as it can, really. I mean,
Mm.
there's the storyline of the Christmas Island nuclear explosion victim I found very affecting, really. And of course, the baby itself, initially they thought it was a thalidomide victim, which
Mm.
they've
Mm.
already covered. So it was a clever piece of writing as well. Um, but gosh, I mean, Heidi Thomas has got a real gift for weaving umpteen stories. There must have been about 10 story threads in this, some of them more significant than others. I mean, she's incredibly talented with this story. I mean, I don't think anybody else ever writes it. It's only her.
Well, I mean, and she's executive producer as well, isn't she? And her husband stars in it. So it's a real sort of, family business. But I just love the way that she keeps, the social issues are there, and but she doesn't bang on about them, and they never seem forced in.
No, exactly. And I
And I
think
think,
that's what's going to happen with the Christmas Island storyline, I imagine. But it's a memory of that, a story which began then, and which took years of campaigning to get anybody to recognize it. And you can just feel the frustration already with the doctor who's campaigning, that, they're going to reach one brick wall after another, aren't they? So it's
mm,
brilliant to get it going at the start of the series. And it's possibly be 1999 before they'll get anywhere with it, really, alas.
yeah, that's the 20th series of Call the Midwife, which will, of course, be there. I mean, everyone, goes on about, hashtag be kind, but I think it's just nice to see people being nice to each other in Call the Midwife. I think it's a perfect Sunday night show, and I love little things like, the nuns having a fashion show this week.
Oh yes,
And
one of the skirts was
one
above
they've
the
been
knee.
Yes, I know. And you just saw this shot of this, this young woman putting down her skirts below her knees. It was just really, it's really sweet. And again, it's that sort of classic older female driven television that I don't think we see enough of. There's lots of ages in it, but these are older women making things happen, as opposed to, being cougars and having it off on kitchen islands, as Emily Watson was last week. It's just great to see these older women being part of the community and making things happen. It's very, very satisfying for us older women.
Are you saying, Claire, you don't want to watch Call the Cougar?
Maybe that'd be great, wouldn't it? That's a great drama series about some middle-aged woman who sets up a brothel. Yeah, in the 60s. Yeah, we should make that. We should offer it to Netflix.
We'll do that. We'll write that for next week, and we'll put a trailer up for it. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe we could make it and put a trailer on YouTube.
So Call the Midwife. We'll give that 5 stars. Well, I will anyway.
Yes, definitely, because it's such an enjoyable hour of television, just pure enjoyment, and it's got a big heart. So hooray for Call the Midwife.
Well, let's talk about The Syndicate, BBC One, which I think is halfway through its 6-hour series. And I think it's descended into soap land. I mean, I didn't really expect it, but it's a sort of young soap opera of people gadding around in Monaco chasing this phantom lottery win, but then having crises over teenage pregnancies and their love life. I mean, have I just gone into sort of young Emmerdale by mistake?
You know what? That's an absolutely brilliant way of putting it, David, because when I saw the first episode, I just thought, where are the older characters? You know, Mark Benton popped in, and he's normally like a stalwart of dramas like this, and he was suddenly off as the man who sold the what's it, a dog?
Duke.
Yeah, a dog kennel. That was it. He sold the kennel. But I just wondered who were all these younger characters, and yeah, it is like teenage Emmerdale. That's a brilliant way of putting it. But it has got the usual Kay Mellor tropes in it, hasn't it? It being northern and people being a bit poor and betting too much on internet gambling and stuff like this. But it seems a bit wrong, doesn't it, to be in sunny south of France?
It is. I think secretly they only had a budget for 1 day's filming in Monaco, and they drove there. They were so exhausted. Let's do one scene with Neil Morrissey in a bathtub, and then the dog jumps in, and then that'll be it, really.
Yeah, I think it seems odd to see Neil Morrissey playing characters like that, because he played a baddie, didn't he, in Line of Duty, and now he's gradually playing a sort of daft baddie in this. I think maybe it's a sign of his career that now he can play baddies. Now he's a little bit older and lost that baby face.
Yeah, I just wish it wasn't so Scooby-Doo. It is Scooby-Doo does Casino Royale, isn't it? I don't really.
Yeah, they're all going around in that minibus which plays as the mystery machine in Scooby-Doo. And
then the minibus will be hanging over the cliff. We can only hope for that.
Yeah, and then when Neil Morrissey goes, and if it wasn't for you pesky kids at the end, yeah, I think we know how this is going to end, isn't it? But I didn't find it particularly satisfying. And, I always think, again, there's a real, we know what Kay Mellor's going to do. It's going to be an ensemble piece. And every week we're going to find out something about one of the characters and blah, blah, blah.
So I think 1 star, I'm fed up with The Syndicate. I think it should get back on the plane and come home to Leeds, frankly.
Yes, I agree. I mean, it's not really appointment to view television.
So the sun is shining, and as I say, that normally means that the TV seasons are changing as well, and there are fewer, better, newer programs to watch. And it seems like ITV have already started doing this by having over 5 nights, 4 repeats: Casino Royale, and then Gino, Fred, and Gordon doing their sort of trip around Europe. I mean, I just can't stand that show anyway. It's sort of half, 3.5 shouty men or something, I don't know. And then you had Fred running around in a Scottish field with these cows, pulling his skirts up. I mean, fair enough, but I don't get that show. But the depressing thing was that had the highest rating on Thursday night of any show across 9 o'clock, which is sort of depressing. I mean, it only had 1.6 million viewers, and that was the highest. So I'm afraid people are voting with their remote control at the moment and not putting up with any of this stuff.
Well, and because, do we actually know how many, we don't know how many people are watching Netflix any one time, or Amazon Prime, or anything like this. We don't, there are no figures available. But you don't like that program, but enough people liked it to watch it again, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely crazy. And I mean, this ITV are stripping dramas, aren't they, on 3 nights? They stripped that drama
Too
last
close.
week over Too Close. They stripped that for 3 nights over the week. And it's like, well, maybe if they saved it and made it a bit more of an event, put it out week by week,
I mean,
it would at least build some tension.
yeah, I mean, next week they're stripping another drama, Viewpoint with Noel Clarke. So I'll be interested to see. I think that's over 5 nights. So possibly they were saving that up. So they had a completely dud week. But how cynical is that? Essentially, they sit around saying, well, let's just give them. What's the best? What was the highest rating show we had 3 months ago? People will vaguely remember. I think it's actually 2 years ago. And they bung that in. I mean, that's not the way to do these channels. People rely on these channels to be pretty good most of the year around. Okay, let's have a few weeks off over the summer, but not to suddenly go, oh, let's just bung this in, and then a whole lot of Bond movies as well. So they're putting Bond up against Line of Duty. Okay, but that's still, you've got all these viewers there that aren't interested in Line of Duty, and it's only getting about 10 million.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, now you've got channels, you've got ITV2, ITV3, ITVB, and you've got the drama channel as well. A lot of these programs are on other channels apart from ITV for you to watch. So these old shows, they've probably been seen once on ITV, then they go to another ITV channel, and then they come back to original ITV. I mean, it really is.
It's a cynical merry-go-round. Yeah,
it's a cynical merry-go-round.
So get on with it, television. We need a few more newer programs and stop being so cynical. So I thought we'd have a look at location. I don't really know why, but it's got to like 34th or 35th series, and we should note it on We've Been Watching, because it is a staple in a lot of households, including mine. And when I watched it this week, I thought it's sort of gone beyond property porn now, hasn't it? I mean, it's the drama of whether anybody can afford the house they want, it strikes me.
Yes, this week it was 2 couples looking at places outside Edinburgh, wasn't it? And Edinburgh is very expensive and genteel. And it was basically, this couple had moved back from Hong Kong, hadn't they? And they thought they could buy a mansion. And in fact, they could buy a very big flat. And the disappointment from them and the schadenfreude from me was immense, I must say, because I'm looking to move at the moment, and my idea of hell is watching property programs.
Really? And yet that should be inspiring you, shouldn't it? You should get in contact with Phil and Kirsty.
This is it. You know what? That's a very good point. But what was interesting this week was I found myself having a couple of days off, and on Channel 5 in the morning I watched House Doctor with Anne Maurice.
Gosh, I haven't seen that for years.
I know, and it was a repeat of these early programs where Anne came and did made over everyone's house to sell. And you know what? Even though it was dated, it was still incredibly watchable, which just goes to show what you were saying earlier. We never tire of property programs. We never tire of looking around other people's houses and going, oh, that's terrible, or that's lovely, or I mean, as I said earlier, the schadenfreude of people we don't like not being able to find a house.
And then, but then of course, it's sort of always a happy ending, isn't it? I mean, the format is a gift. It's still the makeover format, isn't it? You're making over these people's lives. You're saying, look, your housing situation's awful. The only 2 people who can solve this, like superheroes, swoop in, Phil and Kirsty, and can sort it out. And if you'd arrived from Mars, you'd think Phil and Kirsty were actually a couple, wouldn't you? They're so incredibly chummy, aren't they, all the time?
Yeah, and hasn't she started giving him a nickname? She's, she doesn't just call him Phil. She calls him something else I can't remember. But they really are like a televisual couple.
Yeah, and I mean,
it's really rather sweet.
It is quite sweet to stay together for that many series. I mean, I couldn't think there must not be another lifestyle program that has lasted as long as this. And it's got a lot to do with their relationship, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And maybe they're just good at finding houses. Maybe they're just very good estate agents.
Well, I mean, I think this is actually their proper business. They're not just doing it for TV, are they? I mean, what I find interesting about all those things like A Place in the Sun, where they try and find people properties abroad. The thing about those things is nobody ever buys anywhere. Nobody ever buys anywhere at the end of those series, or at least with location, people do buy a property and it's kind of tied up at the end.
I mean, the
which
worst
is
thing
satisfying.
the worst thing about Place in the Sun, it makes me not want to go to any of these places. I mean, even though they're dirt cheap, I mean, the places look absolutely awful, and no one wears a smile on their face. They're in the sun, everything's lovely. You know, they've probably had a nice drink, a nice lunch. You'd think they'd be in a terrific mood and they'd buy anything, but people don't, do they? It's extraordinary.
But yeah, they are pokey rabbit hutches, aren't they? Especially the ones in Spain, you know, purpose built and filled with all that horrible orange furniture from the 1970s. Ugh.
We've sorted our property programs. Location is still in prime #1 position. The best piece of real estate in the sort of lifestyle show arena.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Let's also talk about This Is My House, which is a new format, a game show of a strange kind, which was formatted by Richard Bacon, the presenter, I learned this week. So good luck to him for coming up with a format that sort of works. And it's another vehicle for Stacey Dooley, and she needs some work, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. She's just doing another podcast for Radio 5 this week as well. But what strikes me is this is through the keyhole for plebs, isn't it? You know, it's who lives in a house like this? Who lives in a Barratt house like this on an estate in a development? And it strikes me that Stacey Dooley, she's one of those stars, isn't she? They're looking for vehicles for her. And I don't think they mind what it is. They just want to put her in something in prime time. And she's engaging, but I don't know. I don't think she's a great fit for this.
No, I'm not sure about the show either. I mean, I've been trying to get into it over the last few weeks, and it's got Bill Bailey in it, and I always laugh at him. And it had Richard Madeley this week as well. And he was telling a lot of funny stories, including judging people's personality and how he did it. Including O.J. Simpson when he interviewed him, and so I could tell it from the eyes. I'm going, oh my lord! Of course, Madeley's meant to double as Alan Partridge, which I think is very cruel. By the way, he's not Alan Partridge. He's better than Alan Partridge, isn't he?
I think he's much better than Alan Partridge. I think he's very good. But I mean, you know, Alan Partridge. We can talk about Alan Partridge next week, can't we? Because he starts this week on this new series. But yeah, Stacey Dooley show, I mean, it's nice, but it is, again, we cannot get enough property programs, so you know, any spin on property is more than welcome, isn't it?
Well, happy viewing, Claire. I mean, we'll give location 5 stars for still being there, and This Is My House probably 2.5 stars, because I imagine that will come back, because it's such a good vehicle for celebrities. They're all over it. Sometimes you can get 7 celebrities in one show. That's got to be good.
Well, their agents will love it, won't they? But I mean, for me, it's another daytime show that's ended up in an evening slot.
Well, happy viewing next week, Claire, and it's time to go and tidy up our respective houses.